Hey YouTube, Brian here, back with another deck profile. So yesterday I attended the Seattle regional that had around 250 players. We played 8 rounds of Swiss, and I'm happy to report that I ended up finishing the event undefeated. So I went 8-0 and ended up finishing first place at the regionals and got this neat little regional deck box as a reward. So very happy about that. If you guys saw my Fiends of the Musketeer profile a while back, I missed out on top 8 with that regional, and I was quite sad about it because I thought the deck could do much better. As you can already see, I've swapped over to Malice since then, and that has kind of allowed me to do better at some of these regional events just by virtue of playing a deck that's much more powerful. And yeah, so finished first place, and I'm happy to kind of give a deck profile, kind of tell everyone kind of my thoughts about the deck, as well as just have another general discussion on the state of Malice, just like I did for Fiendsmith Musketeer, just because I think it's very interesting to talk about some of the ideas that went into the deck and kind of some of the theory behind like why I chose this variant specifically, because at least until a little while back there were actually multiple variants of Malice running around, but now it's kind of all consolidated into one. So I'll go ahead and get started. So for the main deck, we're playing 3 Dormouse, 3 White Rabbit, 2 Cheshire Cat, 3 of the Field Spell, and then Sarcophagus and Terraforming as like honorary Malice cards, and then 1 of each of the traps. So this is the entire Malice package. Pretty small, pretty condensed. I think this ratio is pretty common. Sometimes you'll see maybe like 3 Cheshire Cats, or sometimes you might see people cut Terraforming, and I know some versions also like cut 1 Underground, just because these aren't like the best starters to start with. I chose to go with less Cheshire Cat and more of Underground, simply because I found too many situations where when I have too many of the Malice names in my hand that it gets very cloggy, and it makes it very tough to especially when going second, break through boards, because I do think that like when you're going second, if you have like a Malice name and then like 4 other competent cards, like it's quite easy to still win from that position. And so I just didn't want to break on too many names, and I wanted to, even though like Underground is not the best starter, Underground is still one of the best extenders the deck could have. And so drawing like 2 Chessy Cats, for instance, is not nearly as good as 1 Chessy Cat, 1 Underground. And so that's why I decided to play more Undergrounds rather than play more Chessy Cats. But yeah, the Malice cards are pretty straightforward, I'd say. Not too much you could change there. Like, it's all pretty much personal preference if you want to play 3 Cheshire or not. But moving on to the non-engine, so we have the Talk of the Town, which is the 10 Bystial build that's been going around. And yeah, we don't play Lubellion, we don't play Regained. You just don't need those cards. They're bad going second. You just play the Bystials because like even Serenir, which is like technically the worst one, like a Bystial is still a Bystial. Like, you banish a Light and Dark and you get a free 2500 body is just insane. To be completely honest, like all the Bystials should probably be limited at some point. But they're not right now, so we use them while we can. It is incredible how much synergy the Bystials have with the Malice monsters, and a lot of that I'll get into when we get into like the extra deck stuff. But like Bystials are just the best extenders for the deck, and they also double as interruption, as DD Crows, as hand traps, and so there's really not a better pairing that like Malice could ask for. Like, yeah, we've been tinkering around with Kashtira Malice, been tinkering around with Sky Striker Malice before like this whole build was discovered, but I think people have just realized now that like the Bystials are just the best, and you can't really go wrong with playing more of them, unless the format becomes like entirely non-light and dark, which like right now Fiendsmith Ryziel is still running around, so Bystials have very good targets. Blue Eyes, a lot of people love that deck, and even if it doesn't end up being like one of the top 3 decks or whatever, like a lot of people, you will still see Blue Eyes at like regionals and YCS levels just by the virtue of it being popular. Like people are getting 3 Blue Eye structure decks and they're like coming back to the game, and they're you know, whether or not they have Primate Engine or not, like you will see them, and Bystials are amazing against Blue Eyes as well. So besides the Bystials, we also run a bunch of other hand traps. So we have 3 Veiler, 3 Ash, 3 Fua. Shoutouts to James for letting me borrow these, as well as the Metaltronus that I'll show later. But yeah, these Fuas, honestly, I didn't like drop them at all throughout the day except in the last round, but they did come in quite clutch in the last round, so I'm glad I played them. And then 3 Nibiru, of course. So this is just like probably the 12 best hand traps you can play right now. Like obviously you would prefer to play Imperm over Veiler, but with there being so many Bystials, you don't want to turn off your own Imperm. So you just want to play Veiler so that you can still use it even if you Bystial first. And then also it's a light target for your Bystial's Banish, which is sometimes important, especially when you play against decks like Fire King or Mermail, where they basically don't have any light and darks. So being able to just Veiler one of their monsters and then still being able to summon your Bystials during the end phase, just super important. But yeah, nothing much to say about these. Honestly, they're all like pretty self-explanatory, just like the best hand traps of the format. And yeah, that's pretty simple. And then of course the 3 Metaltronus, which I think everybody has kind of discovered is quite broken. Yeah, there's like so many applications for this card, and some of it I'll show when I get into the extra deck. But like we already know that, like, you know, you play 1 detonator so that you can out your opponent's detonator. But this card is also crazy in the mirror match because if you set this card, your opponent normal summons a Dormouse or any other name, you can just Metatronus it, summon your own Dormouse, banish both face down, and it's like a very efficient way of dealing with a normal summon. Whereas like in other situations, it might be kind of tough to just deal with a normal summon of a Malice name. This is also pretty good going second as well, because when you go second, this basically just becomes an E-Telly for the deck, like in the mirror match. So like if your opponent goes GWC, summon back White Binder, you can chain Metaltronus, targeting their White Binder. Not only will it negate the White Binder, you can now summon any Dark Cybers from your deck. So you can go get a name, even though it's negated, you know, you can just link it off, banish it with a Bystial, it'll come back. And yeah, so very good card. Would probably continue playing it going forward. Yeah, so now let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we still play the 1 Lingaribo and the 1 Link Decoder as the Link 1s. I see a lot of builds cutting Lingaribo. Me personally, I wouldn't ever play without Lingaribo, just because Lingaribo is actually like very important in the mirror match, since it threatens turning off their GWC like at any point. Like any normal summon of the name just makes it so that like their GWC could be completely invalidated. And so a lot of times when you normal summon a Malice name, your opponent has to flip their GWC right away, otherwise they risk basically not being able to use it at all. And a lot of times if you see that like maybe they forgot to flip it right away, or that like they're holding on to it, you can like normal summon a name, link it off right away for Lingaribo, and then like use a Bystial to banish your name and just keep comboing from there. So I still think Lingaribo is very important to have, so that's why I will keep playing it. For the Link 2s, we have 1 Lizardos, 1 Splash Mage, just for like your standard combos, so important to have. Funnily enough, I'd say like Lizardos is probably the one in this extra deck I summon the least now, just because like in all situations, like 90% of the time, you want to avoid going into a Link 2 because it makes you very vulnerable to a lot of different hand traps. So if you can skip straight to your Link 3, then that's like the safest route to play through like a bunch of like interruption. So Lizardos, I don't summon like that much now, but you still need to have it like for those situations where you only have one starter. And then Lizardos kind of just bridges you into the whole combo, and just got to put your opponent on having the actual interruption. And then we played 1 Cerberus. This is partly to make a bow, but also because everybody, well not everybody, but like a lot of people are on Chaos Hunter now, especially after Dinkabui topped with Fire King, and he played Chaos Hunter in his side deck. And a lot of people are now just playing 3 Lancia, 3 Chaos Hunter, some amount of Meowls in their side deck maybe. And so you just want to have a way to out the Chaos Hunter. Otherwise, like there's not really a clean way to out Chaos Hunter in your extra deck. And Cerberus did win me a match yesterday when my opponent Chaos entered me, but then I just made Cerberus, popped it, and just kept comboing. And yeah, the Chaos Enter didn't end up mattering. And then 1 SP and 1 Dark, pretty standard. I'd say the Dark is very important because Dark is how you bridge your Bystials into your the Malice part of your deck, and I did have it come up a couple times where I didn't draw any Malice names, but I did draw a bunch of Bystials. So you can just link 2 Bystials off, make Dark. If there's something to steal from your opponent's graveyard, great. If there's not, then not really a big deal. You can run Dark into one of their monsters, have it die, and then when Dark dies, you can search any of your Malice names. So I'd say Dark is a very important inclusion to have. Also, just all around great in the mirror. You can just steal one of their names, or just steal one of their link monsters as well. That's very clutch to have. And then just one of each of the Malice Queens. I think that's pretty straightforward. And we still play the 1 Axis to end games. Still play the 1 Firewall. And then the new addition is Abaoku. At YCS Orlando, I played the Terahertz version still, but I think Abaoku is probably the better version going forward, just because Terahertz is much worse when Bystials can just instantly get rid of your Deceive Worm. So then like you don't really get like much value out of your Terahertz, and Terahertz becomes kind of a liability in the mirror match, because if your opponent has any kind of steal card like Talents or Enemy Controller, they can just take your Terahertz and you're very likely to just die off that. Abao is just much safer, also much less investment. I will say I don't really make her all that often, because I found that with a lot of the combo lines, it's either you go for Abao or you go for Cryptor, and most of the time I will go for Cryptor instead. I just think Cryptor is better in most cases, but Abao is nice to have just as part of your inboard piece when you can't get to that, and another way to out Chaos Hunter, I suppose. And then the last two, there's Detonator for the Metaltronus target, but then we have the Talk of the Town, which is Goblin's Crazy Beast. So if you've seen any like Malice profiles going around like the last like week or so, you've probably seen this being thrown in, this specific build of like 10 Bystials. And this card is crazy. It is, as its name describes, a crazy beast. It came up, I think, like 4 times yesterday. And I swear every time I read this card, it gets like new effects printed on it. So just to explain how crazy this card is. So this card has 3 different effects. So first effect is it can target a spell or trap your opponent controls and detach 2 Xyz materials in Goblin fashion anywhere on the field. So you can detach from your opponent's Xyz monsters. You don't have to detach from the Crazy Beast itself. So if you detach 2, then you attach the spell and trap you targeted to the Crazy Beast. And then the second effect is if a monster of yours will be destroyed by card effect, you can just detach 1. So it's just the Dingirsu, yeah. And then its third effect is when it's in the graveyard, you can summon it back and attach a Goblin card from like I think your deck to it as material. But the attach is optional, so you don't have to play any other Goblin cards. You can just like summon this back for free. And that's a once per duel, but none of the other effects on this card have any hard ones per turn restrictions. They're all soft ones per turns. So the reason this is so crazy is because like any 2 Bystials in your deck just represents a very clean detonator out. So say you summon 2 Bystials, it doesn't really matter what you banished with the Bystials. Like even if their dual drive resolves, like Crazy Beast just outs the whole Rizio board by itself. So let's say their dual drive resolved and they have like a 3 material detonator. So they have 3 material detonator plus cross. So you overlay both of these into your Crazy Beast, and then you use Crazy Beast effect targeting your opponent's cross. Now Crazy Beast doesn't detach for cost, it detaches for effect, so your opponent can still respond to it. But basically your opponent has like a few choices here. If they negate with cross, then they have to detach from detonator. So now detonator has 2 materials, but your Crazy Beast still has 2 materials as well. So like if you normal summon a Malice name and they go detonator effect target Dormouse, destroy it, you just go detach and their detonator has done nothing. So if their detonator has only 2 materials left and your Crazy Beast has 2 materials left, you've basically invalidated all of their detonator materials. So that's if they cross negate it, right? But well, what if they don't cross negate it? Let's say they just let it go. Well, if they let it go, you detach 2 materials from the detonator and you attach the cross to your Crazy Beast. Now your Crazy Beast has 3 materials, your opponent's detonator has 1 material, and you've gotten rid of the cross negate. And it's like you basically ended up in the same place. And like so like whether your opponent decides to cross negate or not, it doesn't matter because your Crazy Beast will out their board anyway. Now, what if your opponent imperms your Crazy Beast? So let's say they go Detonator Chainlink 1, target your Crazy Beast to destroy it, and they go Imperm Chainlink 2, target your Chainlink Beast. Sorry, it would be Crazy Beast Chainlink 1, target Cross, Detonator Chainlink 2, target Crazy Beast, and then Imperm Chainlink 3, target Crazy Beast. So then Crazy Beast then gets negated, Detonator destroys Crazy Beast, and Crazy Beast goes to the graveyard. And you don't end up detaching materials or sucking up the Cross. But remember, Crazy Beast has a once per duel graveyard effect to special summon itself back. So you can just special summon it back. You don't have to attach a Goblin card. It has no materials, but remember, it can detach from these materials from anywhere on the field. So you can go Crazy Beast, and also it's not a hard once per turn. So you can go Crazy Beast effect again, target their Cross, and their Detonator now has 2 materials. So if they Detonator to pop your Crazy Beast, then their Detonator is left with 1 material, and 1 material is usually like perfectly fine to play with because it means like they have to pick between Detonator popping something or using their Cross negate. If they have Detonator with 1 material and a dual drive with 1 material, which sometimes that can happen if your opponent like sends a Rise Your Name and then attaches it with dual drive, so then they leave dual drive with 1 material, you can detach 1 from Detonator, detach 1 from dual drive, and it'll still basically get rid of the Cross negate. So yeah, Crazy Beast is as crazy as it sounds. Card is insane, and I will probably still play it going forward. It's just such a crazy card, and very happy to have been playing it. Hey everyone, post-editing Brian here. So I know since people asked about this in the comments, I forgot to address this when I was filming the deck profile, but I chose not to play Nightmare Griffin in this build, as you can see. And that might be a very odd choice to a lot of people because anytime anyone ever thinks about Abaku in Malice, all they think about is how Abaku just loops Nightmare Griffin. And the reason I'm not playing Nightmare Griffin is because I think Griffin is weak to a lot of hand traps. Like if your opponent knows that you'll be going for a Nightmare Griffin line and they hold their hand traps for that line specifically, like you can get really screwed on your end board. I think the like part of the reason why like the Nightmare Griffin setups are so successful is because a lot of people just like when they see a Malice card, their brain just turns to mush. Like they just don't think about like where they could possibly use their hand trap to most effectively stop their opponent. And so like most of the time they don't even bother waiting until the Nightmare Griffin. But like if you're someone who plays Malice, if you're someone who understands Malice, and you understand that like, okay, well, Griffin combos are very weak to hand traps. If you just hold your hand traps, then I think the Griffin line gets a lot weaker. So that's why I'm not playing the Griffin line. And also forgot to mention that I cut Dotscaper. You just don't really need it. You'll see in the combo video when I get that up that a lot of the lines now, you really don't need Dotscaper. So I would rather not play a brick in my deck that honestly really sucks to draw. And then for the side deck, so we just have 3 Droll. So Droll, as you would expect for things like Mitsurugi, for Mermail, stuff like that. But Droll is also just nice to side in going first in case your opponent charmies you. And I've had games before, not at the regional, but I've had games at locals before where my opponent like double charmies me, and I'll just Droll, give them 1 draw, and I can even add the Droll back with Firewall at the end of my combo, and you basically end on the same board. You end on like Cryptor, GWC, and like nothing has changed. Then you have 3 Lancia, of course, for the mirror match. Nothing too much to say there. I have 2 Phantasme. This is something I was also trying out. I don't think I resolved this card once during the regional. So I don't know if I'll keep playing it. I might take it out. It kind of depends. But yeah, it's kind of a nice like generalist card. It's like decent in the mirror and decent into a lot of other matchups. So yeah, it's all right. Then we play 1 Feather Duster, just like as like 1 form of back row removal, since like a bunch of people are like playing like strikes in the back row now, and just having something to like help you with that is just good. And 1 Called By for going first, and then 2 Tactics, of course, for also going first, and 3 Solemn Strike. So yeah, the reason we only play 2 Tactics is because you want to usually have like 6 cards going first. So usually going first, I always side in these 6. And then like For the Drolls, I'll side it in if I can replace it with a different hand trap. So usually, you know, the 3 Fool Loss come out, and the Metaltronus might come out depending on the matchup. But otherwise, like, it could be the Valor's coming out, or I could side out one of each Bystial if the Bystials aren't amazing in the matchup. And so, yeah, that's the deck. And I do want to talk about, like, kind of how this deck is positioned with, like, all the other, like, Malice variants, because I know for me, like, when I was trying to pick a Malice variant to play, at least a while back, I had a really hard time picking between Kashtira, Sky Striker, or Bystial. And I think, at least back then, the decision was more of a personal one, like, whichever you preferred would be fine. But now I think it's pretty clear that, like, Bystial is the best version, by a pretty large margin. Like, I think the reason the Sky Striker version was, like, so good and performing so well was because having Widowmaker be searchable in your deck was just so strong to outing Detonator at the time. But now, after Twins got released, Widowmaker isn't a Detonator out anymore, and so the Sky Striker variant really fell out of favor. The Kashtira variant is like fine. Like, I think Unicorn is, like, very strong to open with any name, really. But I think the issue with the Kashtira variant is just that it conflicts too much with Bystials. And since Bystials are so strong right now, like, you can't really, like, justify playing the Kashtira stuff when they just get shut off if you drop a single Bystial. And yeah, there's ways to clear Bystials off your board, like you can, like, Haggard itself or something and then clear your board, summon a Unicorn, but you kind of just don't want to have that, like, naturally in your deck. And so yeah, that lands us on the Bystial variant. And I think the biggest question that, like, a lot of people have is, like, okay, well, if you play Bystial Malice, how do you play around Lancia? Like, don't you just lose if your opponent drops Lancia on you? And the answer to that is, how you play around Lancia is you play this. So this is how you play around Lancia. If you count the Bystials as hand traps, you have this is 22 hand traps in your deck. And if you go first, you have 3 Metaltronus. If it's post side, yeah, it usually will be post side because people side in Lancia. Then you have, like, you have your strikes, you have your talents, you have your called buys. It's like, even if you get Lancia'd, like, yeah, you probably won't be able to make, like, much of a board, because you don't have, like, that Unicorn special summon, you don't have that Hornet Drones to help you still end on a Link Monster. You still have so many hand traps, so much non-engine that, like, you can very reasonably assure yourself that you won't die and that you'll be able to stop what your opponent is doing. And, like, if you stop what your opponent is doing and it comes back to you and they don't have a Lancia, then you basically win automatically. And, like, I think people are, like, starting to figure out that, like, okay, the way to play around Lancia is not to play engines in your deck that, like, work well under Lancia, but that, like, aren't particularly great in, like, most other circumstances. These cards, however, they work great in basically every circumstance with very few exceptions, and they also play, like, quote-unquote play around Lancia in the sense that they help you not die and help you get another turn when you do get Lancia. And so yeah, that's kind of the whole justification behind that, because I know at some point I was really against playing just Bystial Malice because I was so afraid of Lancia just shutting down my whole turn. But, like, you'll see that in practice, like, this deck plays quote-unquote through Lancia much better, just on the virtue of having so much non-engine. And yeah, so that's it for the deck profile. As usual, I'll probably be uploading a combo video later, just showcase all the combos of the deck and kind of help all the new Malice players that are picking up the deck. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching.